Welcome to Bookworthy Podcast, where we talk about kidlit that's good for kids' hearts and souls. Kidlit ranges from birth to teens, so we have a lot of shelf space to cover. If you've followed Bookworthy for a short time or a long time, welcome. This week might sound familiar because we're on break preparing for the next season. But don't worry, we'll be doing some Play It Again episodes in the meantime to continue discovering great books together. New episodes will be coming soon. Happy reading! Today we're talking with the host of the Books That Spark podcast, Terrie Hillard Brown. Terrie has just released a devotional called Building Character Through Picture Books, 25 family devotions based on favorite picture books. This devotion aims to make bedtime storytime more meaningful with devotions based on popular books you might already be reading with your kids. Welcome to Bookworthy, Terrie.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It is my pleasure. Now, to start us off, Terrie, since Easter is around the corner, what is your favorite Easter candy?
Well, I honestly don't eat much candy because I react to it, but I do give in and have the Reese's peanut butter eggs sometimes. But the big controversy is I can't stand Peeps, and my children just think something's terribly wrong with me.
I agree with you. Peeps are disgusting.
Yes, amen.
Yeah, I just want to just talking about them. But once with those the mini Cadbury eggs came out, I could eat those like popcorn, and I'm like, this is dangerous.
Dangerous for sure. Yes, I remember. Yeah.
Too fun. Now, Terrie, do you have any special Easter traditions in your home?
Well, the one that makes my children cringe the most is that every Easter we choose a color for our clothing, and our whole family dresses in that color, and we take a picture. And most of the time it's fine, but one year I chose salmon, and my sons thought it was pink, and they were not happy with the pink, and they still tell me they were disappointed in that choice. But I kind of make them do that every year, and so they put up with me.
The traditional family Easter portrait is very important.
Yes.
Even in salmon.
Yes, I loved it.
Too fun. Well, Terrie, tell us a little bit about your podcast, Books That Spark.
Well, we're on our fourth year, our fifth season, and we review picture books mostly, but I've started getting into a few more chapter books because I've had families like, help, I don't have time to preview all the chapter books. And so I have a team helping me read chapter books. And so we're starting to review a few more of those. I've had a few more guests who write the chapter books for middle schoolers and high schoolers. And so that's been fun to get into. But we also talk a lot about discipling our kids. So at the core of what we're talking about is everyday discipleship every day based on Deuteronomy, where it says, as you go along your way, as you put the kids to bed, to talk about the things And so that's really a focus of it, even though we mostly talk about picture books.
Now, did your podcast kind of inspire your book of these 25 devotions?
It did. Actually, I don't know if you know who Kathy Lipp is, but she's a friend of mine, and she's a writer and speaker. And she's like, you love writing devotionals and you love picture books. You should put them together in a picture book devotional. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's perfect. And I started working on it a couple years ago, but immediately started working on it and just loved it. It was the easiest and most fun I've had writing anything I've written. It just was my heart. So it was fun.
So fun. It's great when that your burden and your passion collide, and it's a sweet spot in writing or in, anything that we do for the Lord.
True.
It's so fun. Now, how did you choose some of these books? You have several classic books like, what is it? Chicka Chicka Boom Boom and Corduroy and The Runaway Bunny. But then you have some newer books that are The Very Impatient Caterpillar and Llama Llama Red Pajama. How did you choose the books that you highlighted in your devotional?
Well, for this first one, I just chose some of my favorites that I loved. They needed to be general market. And so I thought of what are some of the most popular ones out right now that people already have in their library, and what are ones that they have in their library that are the classics. And So that's where I started. And I had a whole list and just pared it down to 25 for the book. And I'm working on the next 25 now. But yeah, that's how I decided, was just books I loved. I started with Grumpy Monkey. It's one of my favorites. I just had to start there.
Too cute. I was wondering, did your favorite children's book end up on the first 25 list?
Yeah, Grumpy Monkey, I
Grumpy
think would
Monkey.
be it. And then, of course, I love We Don't Eat Our Classmates, and that one's so funny. People who aren't reading picture books, they're like, "What?" They don't know it's about a T-Rex, and so
Yeah.
they got a little worried, because I have a critique group who helped me, go through it and stuff. And it was just so funny, because like, they're, "What is that book about?" And I'm like, "No, trust me, it's a T-Rex. It's good. It's funny."
It is a very fun book, but yeah, if you didn't know it was a T-Rex, it would be kind of concerning.
Yes.
Too funny. What is your goal for this devotional book?
Well, my main goal, most of my followers are homeschoolers, so I wanted it to be something homeschoolers would love. But I believe whether you're homeschooling or not, we need to do family devotionals and to come together as a family. If we're reading, if we have kids who are 5 and others who are 12, we may not have a devotional that will match all of them. And so that was one of my main goals, was to create a devotional where the family could come together. I think whether they want to admit it or not, every child enjoys picture books, even if they're 20. And so the family could come together before bedtime, read the picture book together, and then have the devotional. And so within the devotional, I have questions for the older kids as well as questions for the younger kids. And so those are there so the family can have just a short discussion before they pray and get ready for sleeping time. And then I also included some additional information for the parents. So if they wanted to continue the conversation at breakfast the next morning, or if they just wanted to do the devotional during the day and include a little more discussion, I have some activities, just different things the parents can use as resources. But my main goal was that families could come together, whatever their children's ages, and have everyone be there for the same devotional.
Really neat. I think, what was it, C.S. Lewis said that, a children's book that's only good for children isn't a good children's book.
Yes.
So I love that you're, reaching, an entire family, and not just, stuck on that, younger age that are reading picture books, but also leading teens and preteens to think about books that they loved when they were little, and to think about them differently and deeper.
Yeah, exactly.
So fun. Now, when did your writing journey begin, Terrie?
Well, technically it began in Miss Carmen's second grade class when she had us write a poem. And we had to write about nature. And so I wrote about the moon, and I loved it. I never realized I loved writing till then. And I started just filling every piece of paper around me, every little book, with poems. They were horrible, but I still wrote them. I even made my own little books. I always loved to draw as well. So I made a book of birds, and it just on through growing up. And then when I got into high school, I was very, very shy, and nobody believes me anymore. But when I was little, I was very shy. And so when I got to high school, I got into journalism and commercial art, and I loved it. And my 12th grade, well, all of my English teachers were very strong in teaching writing, but my 12th grade teacher entered us in all kinds of contests. And so I won a lot of awards for my writing, and that encourages you a lot.
It does.
Yeah. So that was like, okay, I can do this. And so I've never stopped writing since then. I haven't really pursued it as a career, so to speak, until recently, probably the past 6-7 years. But I've always written monologues for our church. I wrote the cantatas, used other people's music, but wrote the monologue or dialogue through the program for Christmas and Easter, because we lived overseas and it was hard to ship things. And so I would just use songs we had available to us and then write a cantata for that, or a drama. So I've always used my writing in that way, but it's only been the past, since we moved back to the States in 2016 that I have started really saying, I really want to do this as a career. So even though I'm old.
Never too old to start a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Now, tell us a little bit about where you were prior to 2016. You were a missionary over in Korea, is that correct?
Taiwan.
Taiwan. All right.
Yes.
My bad. But Taiwan. So tell us a little bit about how that experience influenced your desire to write devotionals.
Well, we moved to Taiwan in 1999, and we lived there for about 15 years. And just not being able to get materials easily. I didn't want to break any copyright laws, so I was always trying to be very cognizant of that. And so, because in Taiwan, they don't really have copyright laws, so they don't care as much, but we did. And we wanted to be, have some integrity about it all. So if I couldn't ship something to Taiwan, I would write what I needed. So that went into devotionals, that went into programs at church. It went into my teaching. I wrote curriculum when I needed to, whatever I needed to do, I just wrote it. And I loved it. It was fun to do that. It took a lot of time, but I loved doing that. And then later on, while we were there, of course, being able to download things became much more popular. And so toward the end, I was able to use a lot more of things I could download, pay for and download. But for years, we just didn't have that option. And so it was really a great way to be forced into something that it turned out that I loved. So that was
very
cool.
neat.
Yeah.
Now, raising kids over in Taiwan and trying to encourage them in faith, were family devotions really important in your home?
Yes. Not as consistent as I would have liked. And I talk about that because I think it's important. As homeschoolers, as moms, just moms, we are so hard on ourselves. And I wish when I was younger, if I could have talked to the younger me and just said, chill. Because I made life so hard for myself. My kids had a great time. They tell me now they loved it. Everything was great to them. But I felt like a failure so much of the time when I was homeschooling. And I felt like I never was consistent with my devotionals with the kids. And so that's kind of where the everyday discipleship every day motto came from. Because even though we didn't sit down at the table and do devotions at breakfast time, we talked about things all the time. When there was a teachable moment, I would try to grab it. And I think I was pretty good at that. I may be thinking, oh, we're going over here. We're going to the library. We're going to do this. We're always doing something. And I had 4 kids. Well, I had the 4th one while we were there, had 3 when we moved there. But we would be in the middle of something and then something would happen. And I would be like, ooh, teachable moment. And I would stop where I was going and turn and take that moment. And I really did try to do that well. That was something I really prayed for God to help me see that and take the time to just shift for a second and talk to whatever was happening. One of the ones that sticks in my mind is, I don't remember what was going on. It was probably Easter or something. And I had given the kids some candy. And they were doing this bartering. Well, if you'll give me one of yours, I'll give you one of mine, because they all had a different favorite candy, right? So they're bargaining with each other. And I thought, we're about 2 minutes away from a fight, because that's just what happens. And I said, okay, guys, if you want to share your candy because you want to bless your brother or sister, that's fine. But don't do it expecting something in return. I said, when we give, we should give without expecting someone to retaliate or to that's not the right word,
Reciprocate.
but to reciprocate, that's the word. And then if they want to give to you, then you can feel blessed by that instead of, I expect you to do this. And it just changed the whole atmosphere of their attitude and what they were doing. And they started just blessing each other in that moment and sharing together. It didn't last forever, but for that moment, they did a really good job. They got it. And I felt like it was a real teachable moment that just went well. It went really, really well. So that one sticks in my mind a lot.
Very neat. I love how It's even in my own parenting, I definitely get hard on myself. Oh, we know we need to do this, because other people are doing this, that, and the other. But it's really those sweet teachable moments that we are just acting on in the midst of the crazy that really sit with our kids. I mean, devotion times and resources like you've put together are amazing, but there's no hard, fast rule that this has to be done in order for my children to grow in faith. And I love that.
Right.
Thank goodness. So gracious. Yes. He's so gracious to use everyday moments when, it's just too hectic and too crazy to sit down. Or, I have 2 kids with ADHD, so having them sit down for a formal devotional time is just not in the cards. So we have to keep it very dynamic and I think the more we have a conversation and are just constantly talking about God and how God influences our world and the way we think, the more our kids are going to catch, like, oh, this is how we do things. This is how we talk about things. So what God says on Sunday is the same thing happening on Wednesday and Thursday, that kind of thing. So
yes, amen. Well, 3 of my 4 are on the autism spectrum, and we didn't know that. They were misdiagnosed for a long time. Talk about guilt. Oh my goodness. I have stories.
Brush it up.
Yeah. Trying to homeschool, not knowing, with them having the wrong diagnosis, doing everything that just triggered their, what's the word? Their nervousness. I can't think of the word. But, I was told they had ADHD, and you time ADHD kids and say, okay, we're just going to do this for this amount of time. But with an autistic or Asperger's kid, giving them a timer just sets off anxiety. That's the word. Sets off their anxiety. So I basically tortured my kids. We got through. We all survived. We're all friends still. But, that was rough. And so daily, I felt like I'm doing something wrong. I'm a failure. I can't get this. I can teach a whole classroom of 40 kids. Why can't I teach my 4? So, because I'm a teacher, I should be able to do this. And so, yeah, it was rough, but they grew up to still like us, and they grew up to still love God. So we're good.
I love how God can even use our mistakes and our mishaps to shape our kids to who they need to be in the life that God wants to lead them on. And so we're a part of the journey. Even if we get it wrong, we're going to at least try to direct them towards God in some way.
Yes.
Like, oh, Mom needed Jesus today, didn't she? I need him just as much as you do.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing, I think, with the devotionals as well, that we're honest. That's one of the things I talk about. If we're painting a rose garden and there's no thorns, we're not being truthful with our kids. If they don't see us struggling in our faith and, sometimes questioning how long do we have to wait, God, for something we're really praying for, they need to see that. We need to be transparent with our kids. I mean, not, especially in ministry, we don't tell them everything, or they'd never go back to church sometimes. I mean, like Henry Blackaby used to say, his favorite part about ministry was the people, and his worst part about the ministry was the people. So, iron sharpens iron, and sometimes you just want to scream a little bit. But I didn't want my kids to hate church, and I didn't want them to hate ministry. And so we protected them somewhat, and we tried not to put expectations on them to be perfect little children. And you can talk to anybody in our church. They called them little monkeys sometimes. But we thought they need to be kids. They're just kids, and they don't need to have that put on them to try to be perfect. And so they still love church and everything. So that's cool. I guess we did something right, or God intervened anyway.
He is capable of doing that, most definitely.
Yes.
Now, you said that your kids were called little monkeys. Is that kind of why the grumpy monkey is one of your favorites?
Oh, maybe. That may be it.
Too fun. I love how you never know what inspires your likes and your dislikes. And sometimes just a little nickname can be like, oh, that's what makes this book even more special.
True.
Well, Terrie, what's the most inspirational book or the most impactful book you have read in your life? It could be, doesn't have to be a children's book. It could be any book other than the Bible.
Okay. Um, well, you took my Sunday school answer. No.
I know.
Well, I love C.S. Lewis because he makes me think. But one of the most impactful books, I would say, is O. Halsby, his book on prayer, and it's just called Prayer. And it's an old book, but you can still get it out there on the different websites. But it was life-changing for me, and showed me how important prayer is. And he actually says in the book that prayer is our occupation. And it's just powerful. So that one, I think, had one of the biggest impacts on my walk with God. And I mentioned Henry Blackaby. Experiencing God was revolutionary for me in my walk with God. So those two were really important. But one book I have to share for kids, and this is for older kids. It's a trilogy of chapter books, and it's The Journey of Souls by C.D. Baker. And I used this when I was teaching literature, because it talks about the children's crusades. And those were so awful. Children being taken into slavery when they thought they were going to be involved in the crusades and see peace come to Jerusalem. And it's based on the historical research that Baker did, C.D. Baker. I love his books. He's very meticulous in his research. And, but it's a hard read because it is a terrible story. So you do want to I used it with high schoolers mostly. But that book really, even as I was teaching it, opened my eyes to how if we aren't careful and if we aren't in the Word of God, we can be taken in. And we can be fooled. We can fool ourselves. We can conjure up our own callings and understandings. And that's what happened, I believe, with all of this. They didn't have the Bible to read, and they didn't know better. And so they, in the best way they knew how, were trying to please God, and wound up with a tragic situation. But that really impacted me, that we've got to be reading the Word of God and know what it says so that we don't get fooled or deceived into believing things we shouldn't believe. So that was very important.
That sounds like a book I need to pick up. That sounds really cool. What is it? I have my bookworm kid that might be a little too young for that one, but still, he would probably eat that one up.
Yeah, it's really, you don't want to put it down. That's for sure. The story is just, when I read it, it was one volume. Now he's done it into 3 volumes because the one volume was huge. And so now it's 3 different books.
Omnibook now.
Yeah. But it's just excellent. It really is. And there's a younger when he does on the American Revolution. And the first part of that one, it's a 2-parter. The first part of that one is from England's perspective. And the second part is from America's perspective of all that was going on then. And it's called The List. And it's really good. And it's more about a 5th, 6th grade level. Yeah. And then he has books for adults beyond that, but they're almost all historical fiction, and he writes devotionals as well. But I just love his work, and he's not really well known, but I just appreciate him so much because he, when I called, I was trying to work on my lesson plans. And so I contacted him and I said, I don't have any materials to use with your books. Do you have any suggestions? So he wrote a letter to my students and posed some questions about the themes that are in the book. And they just thought that was the coolest thing ever, that the author wrote to them. And it just helped to bring the book alive to life for them and to discuss those themes. And it was just special. So it's kind of neat. He's a cool guy.
Very cool. It is neat when kids can see beyond pages of a book and see that there is a person behind that. There is intention and thought.
Yeah.
Lots of prayer sometimes. And all that. Well, I love the devotional that you have put together. I've had the privilege of reading through some of it. And I love that it's going to be a great resource for parents to take those books that are fun and what they see on the library shelves at their public school or at their church, and to be able to take those and be intentional with every book that comes into your home, not just the ones that are Bible specific. I think that there's great wisdom that can be gleaned from all books, but I love that you have done that with these just fun books that kids just absolutely love.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
Now, what can we expect next from you, Terrie?
Well, I'm working on the second volume. It won't be out probably for another year or so, but that one. And then I have a curriculum that is, you can use it as a Bible curriculum or just as a Bible study with the family. And I have David, the life of David is out. It's called Heroes of Faith. And I'm working on Esther. That will be out soon. And then we'll have Daniel after that. And eventually, I love character studies because we learn so much from the characters in the Bible. So that's what this is. And so that's coming out soon, the Esther one. And then you can also find me in like upper room devotionals now and then. I'll have one, Starlight magazine for kids. If your listeners know about Starlight, I love that magazine. It's only been out a short time, but it's fantastic. And I've had two stories published in that. So, I'm around here and there.
Just, staying a little busy, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, Terrie, where can people find out about you and your books?
Well, they can find everything from my website, terriehillardbrown.com. And that's probably the easiest because you can link to anything from there. Social media and all my books and everything are there. So that's the easiest.
Well, we'll have that in the show notes for sure, just so people can find you easily and to discover your books too. Thank you so much for joining us today, Terrie.
I've enjoyed this so much. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And thank you for joining Terrie and me on this episode of the Bookworthy Podcast. Check the show notes for any books or links that we discussed, and let us know in the comments what's your favorite Easter candy. And be sure to like and subscribe so we can discover great books together. Happy reading.
I hope you enjoyed this Play It Again episode with the Bookworthy Podcast. I look forward to sharing new episodes and books with you soon. Be sure to join us over on social media at Bookworthy_podcast so you can discover when new episodes are heading your way. Happy reading.